Well, alright guys, welcome back. Catalyst Cameron here, from Catalyst Gamers, here with another Fallout 4 mind-blowing theory, alright, about the game. Now, in one of my earlier videos, I spoke about the idea that the Woman of the Mist could be the Lady of the Lake, or at least based on the Lady of the Lake theology. Right, from the Arthurian period. I further said in that video, I think your main character is based around the theory of Merlin. Why did I say this? I said I would explain it. This is that video where I explain why I think that. And to understand this, we've got to delve a little bit deeper into the older crux of the Merlin legend. Now I'm just going to get up a little bit of a show of information here so that we can look at it. Now, this is looking at, give me a second, this is looking at timeless myths, where they have a short mention of Merlin, alright? And this is okay, but there's other stuff I've looked at, such as on Britannia.com, on Wikipedia articles that have mentioned older works such as the poems of Arthur Le Fay and all this, like old Arthur mythology, Arthurian, the history and all that. It's kind of suggested that Merlin is based on two entities, okay, within English history. One is a gentleman called Ambrose, right? He's seen as the uncle of King Arthur, a man who is older than King Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, and yet is somehow younger as well, is a great military leader, and inspired the way that Arthur would be. Another mention is that it's based on a guy called Modrin. There's Y's in there, I can't really say the word, who was a mad hermit that lived in Wales, that had the ability to foresee the future, had prophet-like powers, if you will. And, lived in a little village, went and met Arthur, became his advisor. That's another version. And then there's other kinds of suggestions as to who Merlin is. Now, this creates a bit of a problem, because we've got stuff like, is he the boy prophet? Is he the wild man of the woods? There's another story that says he's the son of both the devil and some sort of other deity that gives him these kind of weird magical powers. He's like a devil and a good guy. And then we've got the mention with him in the Grail, the fate of Merlin when he gets sealed away by the Lady of the Lake. And now let's bring all this mass amount of story back into one. Now I'm going to start by reading an extract here called The Many Faces of Merlin. It goes, Merlin is one of the most fascinating figures in the Welsh literature and the Arthurian legend. Merlin is a man of mystery and magic, contradiction and controversy surrounded his life. Merlin wore many hats. He was a wizard or a sorcerer, a prophet, a bard, an advisor, a tutor. He appeared as a young boy with no father. He appeared as an old wise man, freely giving his wisdom to 4 successive British kings. He was a doting old fool who couldn't control his lust over beautiful women, who hold him in fear and contempt. He had even appeared as a madman after a bloody battle and had fled into the forest and learned how to talk to the animals, where he became known as the wild man of the woods. Merlin was the last druid, the Celtic shaman, priest of nature, keeper of knowledge, particularly of the arcane secrets. Now, it goes on further to talk about one of the kings he served was an old king, and way back in the day, and then he appears later on. So sticking with this little chunk of segment, let's try and reflect on that and bring it back to our main character from Fallout 4. alright? As best as we can. A wizard and a sorcerer. Well, you're a man from the golden age of America, in a sense, compared to what the Fallout universe has become. Your ability to use the old world technology as no one else can would make you almost like a wizard or a sorcerer to these people. The fact you can be considered a prophet, seems to suggest this. Think about how when you go and do the mission where you meet the woman of the mist, when you return to Richter and the other children of Adam, they call you the prophet of Adam. You become a prophet in that sense. We have mention here of a bard. Now, bards are people that generally went out and made stories or spoke of stories. You are a bard when you go to a vault. What is the vault number? I think it's 81. Do you remember the vault that has... More spoilers if you haven't played Fallout 4, and at this stage you should have done. One of the vaults, when you investigate it, you find the female companion machine begins with C. What's her name? I honestly can't remember. But basically, in that vault, there's an issue where they were trying to create a virus or something, and these mole rats got out and hurt a kid. Anyway, when you're in that vault, there's a moment when you can go to the teacher in a class and recount your tales. At that point, you've become a bard. Now it says you are an advisor. Well, what are the main factions in Fallout 4? The Brotherhood of Steel, the Minutemen, the Institute, and the Railroad. And to all of them, you act as an advisor. You say, we need to do this. We should do this. That option is available for you, but you are generally speaking an advisor to all of them. And finally, a tutor. Well, if you choose to go down the Brotherhood of Steel direction, there is an option for you to take Brotherhood of Steel initiates under your wing and teach them. Show them how to fight. There you are a tutor. I think there's other options throughout the game as well. It says, he appeared as a young boy with no father. Well, if you think about it, your son appears as a young boy without a father. He, in fact, becomes known as the father. You yourself, when playing the game, have no clear memory of your parents. You are literally, when it says a young boy, well, you're pretty ancient. You would appear as a young boy. Now, that's that kind of situation. He appeared as an old wise man. When you first played the game, in the opening scene, you are essentially young. You're about 20. Then you're cryogenically frozen, and you're like 200 odd more years old. By that point, one could quite clearly say you are an old man. But like Merlin, you have quite a bit of vigor, and you are a wise man, because you know about the past. Freely given his wisdom to 4 successive British kings. Well, you're in the Commonwealth, perhaps the most British place in the Fallout kind of universe, in Boston, very English. What are the 4 British kings? Well, the 4 main factions. One of those British kings is Arthur. One of those people in the Fallout universe is Arthur Maxim, a link. You first meet Vortigern. He's the first British king you meet. You could compare that to Preston Garvey as the first kind of king you run into. Now, think again. We mentioned Ambrose earlier, the uncle of King Arthur. Now, this is a loose link, but if one suggested that your son, the father, was also the father of the guy in Fallout 3, very loosely speaking here, he would have appeared as an uncle, a war hero to the young King Arthur. Very similar to Ambrose and just as loosely linked in this sense. And Ambrose is suggested to have had family who were slaughtered that wore the purple cloth, were leaders. Now, if we assume that Ambrose and your character in Fallout 3 are one and the same, his father is, James might actually be the father who is in charge of the Institute. In that sense, it's related to your character, who's from the old world, which would make him almost like a king in modern times, someone of great importance, of wearing the purple cloth. Or even if we think about the father as a person within the Institute, he's high-ranking. He wears, in a sense, the purple cloth. He is one of their great leaders. Now, Ambrose, your character, similar people. Or maybe we could just point out the fact that your guy is always like a war general in the entire series of the game. So in that sense, you're still like Ambrose. That's one of our links. We've got the King Arthur, that's another one. We've got the Four Kings, that's the other one. Now, he was a doting old fool who couldn't control his lust over beautiful women. Well, I don't want to be that guy, but how many female or male companions did people get with in Fallout 4? It weren't exactly hard, alright? And you're not really married anymore. And this is where I bring in the second aspect, alright? It's not mentioned in that extract, but later on it talks about, here we are. So Geoffrey of Monmouth, one of the earliest writings of Merlin, had a similar tale of Merlin's madness. Written in Latin, it was called Vita Merlina, or Life of Merlin. It was written in 1150. In this version, he was known as Merlin Caledonius. Here he has a sister and a wife, but there is no mention of his parents. It is only the text that mentions Merlin having a wife. Never explained what happened to her. Ends up with loads of other people. In the Fallout universe, you never really explained to anyone that you had a wife. Maybe you did have a sister. There's no real mention of that in the Fallout game either. But your main character certainly had a wife. Just like Merlin had a wife. That was a time before you ran into Arthur. Arthur was a lot later. Arthur was around about 1250. Now if we think about it, 1150, 1250, the difference is 100 years. Similarly, that's not too much of a stretch in the time span between our games. It's 200 instead of 100, bits and bobs, little things. Now let's talk a bit more. Oh, actually, let's say about roughly that span. So there we go, another link in. Now, lust over beautiful women, we've talked about that with your companions that you had in Fallout 4. And you continue to pick up. Now, you could sleep with a robot in Far Harbor if you wanted to. And your companions hold you both in fear and contempt. Well, depending on your actions in Fallout 4, they could. He had even appeared as a madman after a bloody battle. Think about it. When you wipe out either the Institute, Brothers Steel, the Railroad, I don't think you killed the Minuteman with anyone, but after any of these battles, you would have emerged having slaughtered hundreds of people that took you in essence. You killed innocents. You would have looked like a madman to them. He fled into the forest and learned to talk to animals. Well, when you meet the woman of the mist and you drink that weird liquid, you do run into the forest. And you do sort of talk to animals, because when you click on those golfers and whatnot, there's an option to talk to them, even though you clearly can't. And he became known as the Wild Man of the Woods. Well, I think you've got some other name, but certainly you went to the woods. Merlin was the last druid. Well, you're probably one of the last old world soldiers. A Celtic shaman. You were a soldier. Priest of nature. Well, not sure what it meant by priest of nature, but you're probably that. Keeper of knowledge. You certainly kept knowledge, and knowledge of arcane secrets. You're from a time before many people. Aside from the Gauls, no one else probably knows what you know. And you were there in Anchorage. You were there and know what really happened in Alaska. You are the keeper of knowledge. Now it mentions that his father was either a devil or an incubus. You're the grandson of some king, and you were a devil yet the servant of God. That's what it reads in the second extract on the history of kings of Britain about Merlin. Now, again, let's think about this for a moment. Son of the devil. Well, when you fight for the American government in the Fallout universe, they weren't exactly the nicest of people. Essentially, they were the Enclave, ruled them in effect. You were the son of a corrupt, broken world, serving a government that enslaved and killed its people. You see that when you walk around Fallout 4 and read the old archives. You were its creature. Yet, in the new world, you can serve God. You can be a servant of good in the world. You could be both evil and yet righteous. That option is there for you. A link again to Merlin. Finally, scholars are puzzled over his birth, his magical power, his prophetic gifts, and his mysterious yet often conflicting fate. Well, we're probably not going to know what happened to your character in Fallout, because we never do. We certainly don't know how you were born. I don't think anyone's going to know how your main character was born. And people even question if you were android these days, if you were, in fact, a simp. So, clearly we're so puzzled over your birth, these scholars have become gaming scholars. And there's a conflict over how you gained the power. And they said the early works of Merlin had nothing to do with King Arthur or his knights. So the earlier stuff doesn't even mention King Arthur, and that's very similar, isn't it? Because King Arthur was around, came in at a different point in your life cycle. Just how in Brother to Steel, Arthur Maxim turns up later on, so you're doing other stuff. Now I can keep reading about this lovely article in the Timeless and how it goes on further and further about Uther and all the rest of it, and I'm just going to leave a link to that in the description. Now all these battles and legends. But let's just come back to the present, all right? So you are, in a sense, based on the legend of Merlin. Now what it says is Merlin comes to Arthur at a time when, in a sense, Arthur most needs him. Arthur still has Uther's kingdom, He's doing all right. And then Merlin brings before him the knights Sir Lancelot and Lancelot's son, I think it's Gawain or something like that, who turns out to be the best ruler. Like, there's a prophecy that goes King Arthur needs someone from the island of, I think it's Avalon or something, and Merlin goes out and grabs Lancelot, only later on to find out it was the wrong choice, and Lancelot fucked up everything for King Arthur and had an affair with his wife, and sort of ruled in his place, didn't do a good job, and then Gawain took over. Now let's compare that very loosely, right, to our world of Fallout 4. We have an Arthur Maxim and his greatest soldier, Paladin Danse, turns out to be a simp. The ultimate betrayal. This man got so deep and betrayed him so greatly. Think about that. Oh my gosh. He's been betrayed by the man he put the most amount of faith in, and that even questions you. And he asks you to go and slay, essentially, Lancelot. And you have the choice to talk him out of it. Just like I'm sure Merlin would have talked him out of it, but had the game been allowed to continue without your presence? This is the other thing. Remember, what is canon in the Fallout world is the assumption of, what if you had never appeared? So, the Brotherhood of Steel would have travelled over to the Commonwealth. Would they have been able to get into the Institute? Probably not. Would they have been able to get with the Railroad? Probably not. And the Minutemen, would they have existed? No. Preston would have died in the goddamn Conclave. Okay, so there would be no Minutemen. Railroad would have continued and all this, right? But what's important is Paladin Dance would have continued his sort of march, exalted march. He would have probably risen through the ranks and ended up becoming the leader of the Brotherhood. And your son, the synth created by the father was in essence Merlin. If father is allowed to exist, why, can we not suggest he could take on a similar form? So Gawain is also a synth in that sense. He is born from the same elements as Lancelot. So Gawain is Lancelot's son, just like in the legend. Your son, the little synth thing that you bring back to the Brotherhood of Steel, is Gawain. Paladin Dance fucks up stuff at the Brotherhood. Arthur Maxim dies young. That probably will happen. He was a great leader in the Fallout 4 game, but when Merlin leaves, Arthur begins his decline as the Lady of the Lake replaces you. Now think for a moment about your position in the Fallout game. It's you bring Dr. Lee in. Now if we say Dr. Lee is also very similar to the Lady of the Lake in this sense, maybe Dr. Lee takes over your position of advisor to Arthur Maxim. You're gone. You who brought about the end of the Institute, the greatest accomplishment of the Brotherhood of Steel in the Boston region, that essentially solidified their control. And you're gone. What does he do? He relies on Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee keeps making weapons of war. Just like Lady Galadriel. I'm doing elf stuff now here. The Lady of the Lake, who makes weapons for the Brotherhood. Mystical weapons. Based on stuff from your time, your knowledge. Dr. Lee makes it. Arthur Maxim does it. Stuff doesn't work out for him as well. He passes away. Paladin Dance takes over. No one else really knows Paladin Dance is a synth. Paladin Dance does a bad job. He listens to Dr. Lee as well. Or whoever he had his little affair with, God knows. Things don't work out for them. And then your son, the synth that has your blood in it, that is built in a different way, it might even grow taller. We don't know how you construct this incredibly advanced child synth. It could grow into a full-fledged person. And a synth taking over the Brotherhood of Steel that has the ideals, it's come from the Institute, so it probably has Institute knowledge built into it. The great power of the Brotherhood, your knowledge from the old world. It could lead the Brotherhood into a great and glorious age, just like Gawain did, just like Arthur's son. And it may even go on a hunt for the Holy Grail. What would the Holy Grail be in the Fallout world? Technology, ancient technology. More than that, the Holy Grail is said to be a gift from the gods, okay? That means a gift from government or aliens. So, zeta waves. Alright, we're going way off topic here. Let's just say that I think a lot of your character's progression is based on the idea of Merlin. The fact this can link in with the story of the Lady of the Mist, the Woman of the Mist, is because of the role that the Lady of the Lake played in being your lover, your wife, whatever you want to take it. The fact Merlin had a wife before, so many stories. I think your character acts as Merlin because he's a war hero, because there's people like Lancelot and Gawain, because of your impact on the Brother of Steel is similar to Merlin in the Arthurian legends. And that's just like right out there. Because I don't think anyone else has made this statement. I think, frankly, it's a disservice that no one has. Because it's all there, you know. And let's not forget, Merlin is a legend, a myth, and myths can be changed with time. Just like I'm sure your role in Fallout 4 will be considered far different than what it is in future generations. Will you be considered a mighty advisor like Merlin? Probably. Will you be considered beyond human because you wiped out the Institute? Like Merlin wiped out some of Arthur's enemies? Certainly. People just as powerful as Merlin. Probably. So, there you have it. Your character is Merlin in the legend of King Arthur in Fallout 4.